Hello, I'm on chapter 8 of Ruin and Rising. I'm here to tell you about all I've read. This is so exciting, so fun so far. My cat is doing something. He's using the litter box. Sorry about that. I'm enjoying this a lot so far. I really forgot. I feel like that's the theme of this vlog. I forgot this, I forgot that, but I forgot just how enjoyable this was. Or maybe I didn't think it was that enjoyable. Okay. When we open this book, we see that Alina and her cohort of Grisha, who are the rest of the Grisha left from the second army, which is about like 10 people, including Alina, maybe less actually. They are all with the Apparat, who is kind of holding them hostage. It's very weird to me why they are stuck with him. Alina still can't use her power at the beginning of this book, so I think that's part of it, but I feel like the rest of everyone else could have fought their way out. I don't know. It felt very unclear, very weird to me, but they do eventually fight their way out. And the reason they would want to fight their way out because the Apparat seems to be treating Alina like a child. It's very weird, very odd, and even more weird that I still didn't understand why she was staying there. And he was also very rude to everyone, and he did try and get everyone in her party kind of exiled, killed, something, as you will see by their escape attempt. Basically, during this, Genya tailors her regularly, and that's basically her only contact with the people that she came with. Otherwise, she's just like left alone, and sometimes she talks to David, I think, because she studies, it seemed like, regularly, or the Apparat allowed her to do that, which once again, I didn't really understand why the Apparat was allowing her to do things. So Genya was in the kitchen and they were working on her face, and they had this whole elaborate plan where basically they fake an attempt to like steal Alina, but then they actually were doing that attempt, and then they set up like a bomb because the kitchens have a bunch of fireplaces that lead to the outside, and that was the reason that Alina couldn't use her power, because she had not seen the sun in so long and she was so far from the sun. So with the fireplaces open, she could like reach and like feel the sun more. So they did like a whole bombing thing. It was a whole fight sequence. 2 people from the Apparat's army died, and Alina was able to gain her power back. And then she like started to threaten the Apparat and was like, you're gonna do these things or else I'll come back, and now that I have my power again. Alina basically brands one of the Apparat's soldiers because they worship him, and she's like taking Nikolai's advice in the back of her head and being like she has to make like a spectacle, make people believe her. So she brands him with her handprint. And I'm like, damn, okay. Tucker's just talking. Alina also reconciles the fact that she wants to kill the Apparat, and I mean, she uses it as like a thing to say like, oh, I'm actually evil, but I'm like, girl, I'm with you, kill him, he's terrible, and also apparently stinks like a graveyard. They start to make plans to leave because now the Apparat is gonna let them leave because Alina has her power back, I guess. I really, like, there were still powerful Grisha there, and yes, the army like was a large army. I don't know, I feel like they could have escaped without doing this. I don't know, maybe they couldn't have, maybe the army was too big. So everyone's going to leave now, all of the Grisha, except for one. Only one person who was a healer chose not to go with them, and he stayed in the infirmary in the White Cathedral, which is where they were with the Apparat. And so they make their way out through the tunnels that they're underground in, and they're going and they're going until a bomb hits near them, and they all are obviously scared. And we get this scene where Mal is so calm, and I appreciated it. He just directs the Squallers to like try and get air out because they put gas in the tunnel, and they do a whole rescue sequence where Alina also realizes that she's been kind of unfair to some of the Grisha, such as Sergei and Stig, who says when they come to rescue him, because they get separated because of the bombs, when they come to rescue him, they were like, oh, we didn't think you cared about us because Alina's been so far off, which, you know, makes sense, but also it's just food for thought. So they finally get out of the tunnels, they all survive. They end up in a graveyard, and they have to leave the graveyard, and they go towards Rivost, which is a nearby port city, I think? Or not a port city because they're on the inside, because they have to go to Westrovka. Anyway, but nearby city, town. And Tolia goes there to try and find someone who will contact Nikolai, who's part of like their network of contacts, I guess, from when Nikolai was Stormhund. Tolia doesn't see anyone. She comes back. They don't know what to do yet, and they set up camp for the night. And in the meantime, Mal goes to wash up, and Alina and him have a talk, and he turns around and she sees that he has a giant ass tattoo on his back. And the tattoo says the famous lines, "I am become a blade," which is very famous for, everyone thinks it's very dumb, and I kind of do think it's dumb, but it has, you know, a meaning, a good meaning, I feel like. You know, we're all clowning Mal for this tattoo, but it means a lot to him. It shows his like dedication to Alina. Like, I appreciate that dedication. Now, if a man showed up, and no matter how much I loved him, showed up with a tattoo dedicated to me that says "I am become a blade," or like "I'm basically your weapon," who I never told to get that tattoo, who never discussed it with me, I would not be happy with that. But, you know, in the context of this fantasy story, I feel like it works. But yeah, it's basically like a giant version of the sun tattoos that a lot of the soldiers were getting, but they were getting it on their faces, which, by the way, wild. They were just all getting faces dedicated to Alina. No wonder she was so uncomfortable. I'd be uncomfortable too, damn. And then they are caught red-handed by some guy who's a captain something of the army, and they capture them. The guy recognizes Mal because Mal went to train with him at some point when he was still in the army, and he does not give a shit. He's like, "Damn, we're gonna eat good tonight. We can sell you to the Darkling." And then guess what happens? Guess what happens? The most exciting part of the book. Maybe. So far. This is why I love Nikolai, okay? Because he just has the best scenes, the best dialogue and everything. As this guy is like talking about how much money they're gonna make, someone shouts in the crowd, "Why not ransom her to Nikolai Lantsov?" And the guy, whose name is Luchenko, is like, "Why would I do that?" He just has people planted in the crowd speaking praises to him, and then he shows up somewhere out of the trees and he's like, "Oh, Nikolai is not bad looking. He's damn handsome, brave in battle, smart as a whip," and he just shows up, and it's the greatest scene ever. Like, I feel like I cannot wait for the show simply for that scene. Like, I hope whoever's playing Nikolai has a smidgen of the charisma that he seems to have in this book, because I love him so much. Like, come on, he just shows up out of nowhere. They didn't even know he was there, and it was kind of an accident. He explains later. He was like, they were in the town by accident, and they saw Tolia, and they were like, "Well, let's see if Alina's also here." He also showed up with a hot air balloon. This time it's really a hot air balloon. The last ship I said seemed like a hot air balloon, but I don't think it was. I think it was like a blimp, maybe? Maybe this is a blimp. Actually, I think this is a blimp. The other one was a hot air balloon. The way it's described, it said it was some kind of shallow barge equipped with sails at one end and suspended beneath a huge oblong bladder. So it sounds like a blimp. But anyway, Nikolai invented blimps. Isn't that wild? He's smart. He's handsome. In my head, he's at least 22, which makes him age appropriate for me to marry. Yes, I'm marrying this fictional character. And then also at the end of this battle that Nikolai does, Alina kind of feels the most since the first book, when those people in the fold ended up dying after she ran away from the Darkling. I feel like this is the first time she really feels like death's more upon her shoulders, because they have to kill everyone from that part of the army, the part that was attacking her, because Mal's like, they can't leave any survivors. She ended up using the cut on one of them, and she threw up. She like couldn't, she was like, "Oh my god, I killed someone." Just shows Alina's really not made for this life. And it also shows that she's so worried about losing her humanity, yet she still feels this kill, you know? She kind of chastises herself. She says, like, Mal and Tolia and Tamar hadn't hesitated. They killed with ruthless efficiency, and I'd taken one life and I curled up like a child, wiping sick from my lip, which I feel like is not bad, you know? It still shows she has her humanity. She still feels things for these people. Another great Nikolai line happens after they take the Pelican, which is the blimp, to the fortress where Nikolai is staying, which is like just inside Firda. After they get off the blimp, Alina and Mal are talking, and Mal says, "Impressive," and Alina's like, "How does he do it?" And Nikolai shows up and is like, "Want to know my secret?" And whispers loudly, "I have a lot of money." It's just funny. I enjoy that line. I feel like reading it out to you is not conveying how funny it is, but reading it, it's funny. They get to this fortress, the king and queen are there, Bagra is there, a bunch of other people from Nikolai's old ship and everything are there. Bagra is pissed to be there, and she's pissed about everything. I'm trying to remember if Bagra died. I feel like she must, but I don't remember. And then Genya's there, and so since the king and queen are there, and Genya had poisoned the king in the first book, that is how the king got sick and how the Darkling was able to kind of take over a little bit before they went into the fold. They were supposed to keep Genya's identity a secret because Genya looks a lot different now. She was disfigured by the Darkling. So they were like, "We just won't say her name, we'll call her something else." But then Sergei lets it slip, so the king and queen are calling for her head, and they have like a trial where Nikolai is the judge, I guess. I don't know. But basically, the king admits to raping her, but he doesn't call it rape because Genya says that she did indeed poison him, but he has to answer for his crimes. They were like, how could you have poisoned him? You don't have access to his food like that. And she says, I poisoned my skin. And every time he touched me, it went into him and I had to purge my skin every day. So yeah, this book is dark, darker than I remember. And Nikolai asked the king, did you force her to do things with you? And basically he was like, she's a servant, I didn't have to force her, which is admitting to rape. So Nikolai does the fair thing, I guess, which is that he says that after the war is over, Genya will stand trial for poisoning the king, but then he banishes his mom and dad and also tells his dad that he has to abdicate the throne to him because what's his name is dead? His brother's dead. I forgot his name. Because he raped his servant. And obviously the king and queen are very mad, but he did it. They allowed it. And it says the queen clutched a hand to her heart. Nikolai, you cannot mean to do this. And he says, she was under your protection, mother. She was a servant. And you are a queen. Your subjects are your children, all of them. And I feel like that says what needs to be said about enablers. And so obviously Nikolai is hurt to have banished his mother and father, but also he's hurt that his parents were allowing that, were doing that. And his brother's dead. He's kind of alone in the world, and now I'm sad for Nikolai. And the king says his last word and tells Genya that at least now you look like what you truly are, ruined. And then Genya whispers to him, I am not ruin, I am ruination, and says, I hope the taste of me was worth it. Power to Genya, stand Genya. And then once the king and queen are gone, Genya sags and is obviously very distraught, sad. She says, you don't understand, none of you do. And then David tries to console her and she says, don't you dare, you never looked at me twice before I was like this, before I was broken. Now I'm just something for you to fix. And then David says, I know metal. And Genya's like, what does that have to do with anything? And he says, I don't understand half of what goes on around me. I don't get jokes or sunsets or poetry, but I know metal. Beauty was your armor, fragile stuff all show, but what's inside you, that's steel, it's brave and unbreakable, and it doesn't need fixing. And then they kiss, and it's really cute. I'm also looking forward to that scene in the show. This better be in the show. They also send Sergei away because he was the one that let Genya's name slip, and he's basically has PTSD. He says, I was never afraid before, not really. Now I'm scared all the time, I can't make it stop. It ends up that Nikolai offers to send him away to like a very quiet station in the military where he could work as a healer. And then here we have a little foreshadowing for I feel like, and then more stuff happens. Alina starts training with Baghra again because she agrees to train her again. And there's, I feel like, a little foreshadowing for something that happens in King of Scars. This isn't a spoiler if you don't know what goes on in King of Scars. But while Baghra is training her, she says, we say light calls to light, girl. But if the science is small enough, then we are like all things. The light lives in the spaces between. It is there in the soil of that mountain, in the rock, and in the snow. The cut is already made. And then specifically, if the science is small enough, then we are like all things. Really is definitely foreshadowing for King of Scars, and I kind of like that. I did not really think there was any foreshadowing for that book, so I'm impressed a little bit. But this is when Baghra's trying to teach Alina to like use the cut like miles away, and Alina does it. She slices the top of a mountain that's like 5 miles away. And that's where I'm at in the book. That was like almost a third, a little more than a third of the way through. So I'm really excited to finish it. I'm so enjoying this reread. I think I'm enjoying it the most out of all the books, which I did not expect. It'll be a tie between Siege and Storm and this book. It depends how this book, I know how this book ends, but it depends how the rest of the book goes. So yes, I'll catch up with you all later. Hello my friends, I have finished Ruin and Rising. This brought tears to my eyes. I cried like a baby actually. Not at the end, in the middle, when something happens. We'll get there. But yes, I am changing my rating. My first time reading it, I think I gave it 4 stars. I'm giving it 5 stars now. I did not imagine that this would be the outcome of this video, but it is. Editing Lucy here. I know I said I was going to be giving it 5 stars. I am a liar. You know, I was really just on an emotional high, I think, from reading the book, finishing the book. I had literally just finished it when I turned on the camera. And so now that I'm editing it and watching me talk about the literal first quarter of the book, I'm like, I can't give this 5 stars. It is more of a 4 stars, maybe a 4.5, but the whole first quarter of the book where there were so many things that I didn't understand that didn't really make sense to me, that wasn't really good writing in that part. So I can't give it 5 stars. I don't know what. I was just so emotional, and usually emotionality, is that a word? Usually being emotional about a book is what tips it to 5 stars for me, but it has to be mostly completely good, and I was really annoyed in the first quarter, so I feel like I can't give it 5 stars. So yeah, I'm gonna say 5 stars throughout the rest of this video. Just know on Goodreads and my actual rating, it's 4 stars still. I didn't actually raise a rating. I love this so much. I did not realize how much I enjoyed the series as a whole. I knew I enjoyed it the first time I read it, but this time, the second time around, I really got to see all the characters more. I started to feel for the characters more, and seeing little hints and seeds planted for King of Scars. So that was really interesting to read, and just overall I thought the story was well told. I enjoyed the writing, I enjoyed the pacing, and it managed to hit me in all the right places. So this is getting 5 stars. I'm gonna tell you where I left off, just the things that have happened where I left off. I'm putting my glasses back on. I wanted to show off my eyeshadow because I'm trying this neutral look, soft glam or something. So tell me how you feel. But you can't really see it with my glasses on, but I need my glasses to see. It's really hard being me. I also have all these sticky tabs. Like I mentioned before, Nikolai banishes his parents away from Ravka because of what happened with Genya. And because of that, his mother finally reveals that Nikolai is indeed a bastard. It was previously rumored that he was a bastard prince, that he wasn't really the king's son, and his mother told him, but also gave him the Ravkin ring. And Nikolai decides to give the ring to Alina as a kind of proposal for marriage because he wants to marry Alina for a political alliance and a little bit because he likes her. But this also still never seemed like a love triangle to me. It really just seemed like friendship. I don't think Nikolai ever loved Alina as more than a friend. I think he thought that he could love Alina more than a friend, but I don't think it was really there, and he knew he was going to have to get married. He mentions a lot whenever they talk about it. He says that he's always known he'd have to get a political alliance, but Alina seems like a really, really good option because they're already friends. It's not some random person, and Alina is powerful and would bring a lot of things, and also he does like her, but I don't think he loves her romantically like that. I think he just thinks he could because he hasn't had that before. And also there's that whole thing of you want what you can't have and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, he proposes to her, but not very romantically. And Alina kind of gives a non-answer to that. Alina later tells the girls in the crew, who are Tamar, Zoya, and Genya, about the proposal, and they're like, yeah, let's. Zoya's like, I'll marry him, it's fine. Zoya says, toss him over, break his heart cruelly. I will gladly give our poor prince comfort, and I would make a magnificent queen. I think Leigh Bardugo is really good at comedic relief. There are so many serious things going on. We're in the middle of a war. And, we just get these sprinkles of funny comedic things that I feel are timed well and bring a little bit of levity. And so it's fun. And also, it's kind of funny that Zoya recognizes her horribleness because literally right after Zoya says that, you actually might bring the prince comfort if you could stop being horrible for a minute. And Zoya says, with that kind of incentive, I can manage a minute, possibly 2. So it's just fun stuff. I kind of appreciate their friendship more. I remember reading King of Scars, which Zoya is a prominent figure in, and I didn't really remember this part of the book, and in my head Zoya was just horrible and kind of grudgingly a friend, but no, they become more actual friends, and so I appreciate that. And then they start discussing what it would mean to have a Grisha on the throne, and Tamar says it would be something special to have a Grisha on the throne, and Genya adds she's right, to be the ones to rule instead of just to serve. And Alina's thinking they want a Grisha queen, Mal wants a commoner queen, and what do I want? So Alina's still thinking about that, this isn't really what I want. I just want to sleep easy in my bed without fear. Okay, And then a little later, Alina ends up going to see the Darkling again, and the Darkling ends up telling Alina he's planning to go into the fold and he's planning to attack West Ravka, which has aligned with Nikolai. So they're their only allies, and the Darkling is planning to attack it. So that's bad. Alina gets out of this fake dream, their connection thing. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. She ends up talking to David because the Darkling says that David left him a surprise, or left him a present basically. And basically David had invented this glass skiff, which are the boat things that they use to cross the fold because it's all sandy. And it basically holds light so that it would make crossing the fold possible, because the Volcra are scared of light basically, but you can't have light because it's so dark in there. But the kind of light that would be required for it would be like a special light that could handle being in the fold. And so the Darkling basically has his plans for it because David had to leave it behind when they fled. And so they make all these plans to try and like stop the Darkling, warn West Ravka. And the light is called Lumia. And the reason that they're worried about it is because, like Alina can control the shadows from her like connection with the Darkling, they are pretty sure that the Darkling probably can raise a little bit of light in the same way, so he would be able to use the glass skiff. And because of this, Alina decides to go talk to Baghra basically one last time to try and get Baghra to tell Alina how to stop the Darkling, what she can do, how she can find the Firebird. Baghra basically tells her kind of, not life story, but her early beginning story. We find out that Baghra is actually the daughter of Morozova, and Morozova was exactly as it seemed. He was very into his work. He had a wife who was obviously Baghra's mother, and Baghra also had a younger sister who did not have any powers. Baghra has the same powers as the Darkling. She is, I don't know what they call it, shadow summoning? I don't know what I actually don't remember what they call it, but she can do the same thing. And her mother was very scared of it, and her father was not paying attention to any of them. So one day, basically Baghra accidentally kills her sister. How do you say that? But they were having like a petty fight, but she was young and she didn't really know how to control her powers in that way. So she got angry and she used a cut on her sister. And obviously her mother is distraught, and her mother already didn't like her. And obviously if one of your kids kills your other kid, even if you treat both kids well, it's probably not good. So anyway, her dad comes and he ends up reviving her sister using Merzost, which is the evil magic. But all the townspeople are there and they see him do that. They see him revive a girl who was cut in half, and they're like, you're a witch. So they end up throwing them over a cliff. And Baghra is convinced, because her dad, Morozova, was so powerful, that they probably survived, and that Morozova must have finished the Firebird, like must have made the Firebird his third amplifier. And that's what we learned from Baghra. There's also some more, I guess, hints, foreshadowing for King of Scars. Where once again, there's a mention of how the small science works. She mentions that Morozova was a healer in the village, and Alina remarks, I thought he was a fabricator, not a healer, but she says Morozova did not draw those distinctions. Few Grisha did in those days. He believed if the science was small enough, anything was possible, and for him, it often was. And by the end of the story also, Alina believes that maybe Morozova, once he saved him and his daughter, maybe his daughter was not actually a non-Grisha. Maybe she also had latent powers, and Alina thinks that maybe she descended from Baghra's younger sister, Morozova's other daughter. And we learn that basically Baghra kind of gave the Darkling his superiority complex, although, I mean, I won't put 100% of the blame on Baghra. But she grew up with her mother not knowing what to do with her, letting her feel very isolated, really not showing her as much love as her sister, or any love, perhaps. So Baghra did not want her son to feel that way, so she taught him that he had no equal, that he was destined to bow to no man, and I wanted him to be hard, to be strong. I taught him the lesson my mother and father taught me, to rely on no one, that love, fragile and fickle and raw, was nothing compared to power. He was a brilliant boy, he learned too well. And Baghra once again begs Alina to give up looking for the Firebird, because Morozova and the Darkling both basically gave their lives to it. And she also points out that at some point previously, Alina makes Nikolai promise that he'll kill her if she becomes too powerful, if she becomes too power hungry after having the third amplifier. But Baghra's like, if Nikolai really thinks that he can kill you after you have 3 amplifiers, you're in for something else. You have another thing coming. Not too long after, there's a meteor shower, which leads to a very nice scene with Nikolai and Alina, but also Mal in the back of her head. Nikolai takes her to like the roof area kind of thing to see the meteor shower, and they pass Mal, who says, "Oh, I'll be coming in a second." And Alina realizes when she gets there that Mal had been coming to show her and that she would always be the first person he turned to when he saw something lovely, and she would do the same. Whether I was a saint or a queen or the most powerful Grisha who ever lived, I would always turn to him. But she's also having this nice scene with Nikolai where he's once again great, and she tells him this is beautiful, and he says, "I told you I had a lot of money." She says, "So you arrange celestial events now?" And he says, "As a sideline." I love Nikolai. And they kind of have a conversation about Mal, how Alina still has feelings for Mal, and then he more fully proposes to Alina and says that if we survive the next few weeks, I'm going to ask you to be my wife, and I'm going to reassign Mal. And then they have further conversation where he talks about how he does want to marry Alina and that they could grow to love each other in time. And they have a very fun, beautiful conversation that I'm not going to read right now. They have a sort of kiss, and she says it was less a kiss than the promise of one. And then he says, "When you're ready," because he knows that she still has feelings for Mal. She's still not sure what's happening with her heart. And then Mal is set to go away. He's set to start tracking the Firebird, and they all say their goodbyes. Mal and a group of people are heading to find the Firebird. Alina and Nikolai are going to Ketterdam to have like a meeting, a political thing. And then the shock of a lifetime happens and the Darkling shows up. Alina and Nikolai are having a conversation and he never finishes his sentence. It says, "A shadowed blur cut across my vision and Nikolai was gone. I stood staring at the place where he'd been, then screamed as I felt claws close over my shoulders and my feet lifted from the floor." And then there is a huge fight scene, and then the Darkling like officially appears, and we learn that Surya had betrayed them. I don't know really where he was, if he went to go find the Darkling, we'd never find out, or if the Darkling found him and he just immediately gave up all the information, we don't know. But anyway, he betrayed them. He told the Darkling where everybody was, and so the Darkling showed up. He has Sergei killed with the Nichivoya by ripping him apart limb from limb, which once again, very dark. I hope that doesn't make it in the Netflix show. Nikolai is being held by the Nichivoya, and basically a Nichivoya goes into Nikolai's mouth and like takes over his body kind of, and it's very weird, and I bawled like a baby. I'm not even lying. I was listening to the audiobook of this for a portion of the time, and I was like outside going to get like coffee or something, and I was coming into the building and there was a woman and like two dogs coming out of the building, and I was just crying as I was walking in front of this lady and two dogs. And so Nikolai kind of runs away as he's this new dark thing because he doesn't know what's happening, and it hurts him kind of, and it's awful. Honestly, reading it is awful. And so there's a bigger fight scene, and then Bagra shows up. She has Misha, who is her kind of servant boy who takes care of her and makes sure like she has what she needs because she's old and always cold. Probably because she's very, very, very old. I was thinking about this, and Bagra must be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, because I think the fold was was made like over 150 years ago, and he was already like king of the Grisha. Not king of the Grisha, he was like the leader of the second army then, known as the Black Heretic. So he was like fully grown by then. We don't really have a timeline for when Bagra decided to have her kid. So she could have been like 100 years old already. Like Bagra's at least 200 years old, I think, which is wild. I just needed to share that. But anyway, Bagra makes Misha come out, and I feel so much for Misha. He's so cute. There was a point in here, I didn't mention it earlier, but he was like bored sitting with Bagra all the time, so Alina and Mal arranged for him to like start fighting lessons. He learned to fence with like a wooden sword, and he's so cute. He's like 7 or 8. He's very young. So Misha takes her out because she's blind now, and Bagra's like, "Okay, go away now." Which is still, you know, Bagra grows on you. We always need that old person to sacrifice themselves, I feel like. Is a YA trope, I guess. Bagra basically has a conversation, and the Darkling is basically like, "I'm not gonna fight you," because she's his mom, and she says, "Then you better strike me down," and he's like, "You know I won't." And it says she smiled then and gave a little chuckle as if she were pleased with a precocious student. "It's true, that's why I still have hope." And then she tells Alina, "Girl, do not fail me again." And then Bagra basically sacrifices herself. She takes control of the Nichivoya and throws herself over the ledge that they're on so that the Nichivoya follow her because she's controlling them. And this gives Alina, Mal, and Misha time to run. So they run, they get on a ship. A bunch of soldiers have to get off the ship because it's too heavy, but they need most of the Grisha to be on the ship because they need to control it, and Alina needs to go because she's a sun summoner. So all the soldiers get off the ship to try and hold them off, and they go. Audric, who is Nadia's younger brother, had basically torn his arm and he was dying, and Tamar and Tolia were trying to keep him alive as they have like 3 scholars on the ship. There's someone who's not meant to be on the ship, and basically Tolia helps him and tries to keep him alive, and Nadia and Zoya are the only scholars who are able to like fly the ship, keep it afloat. So they're working around the clock because they can't take a break. And they fly to Sikarzoi, which honestly I don't remember where that was. And the entire time, Alina's clearly grieving. Alina watched Sergei be torn apart. She feels bad because they left someone behind. Nikolai was turned into whatever he was turned into. Bagra died, and she's having a hard time. And on this island that they ended up on, Nikolai had ended up following them, and she sees him. He had dried blood on his hands and near his mouth. And Alina calls out to him, and he flies away because I think he's scared. He's like half animal now, and this was very sad for me also. I think I cried here too. And Alina kind of finally loses it. She cries, curls up into a ball, and just sits on the floor. And Mal comes and finds her and says that she needs to grieve with her group. There's a nice kind of funny moment that I feel like once again goes with the good like timing of this book, when Alina sees Nikolai. She was supposed to be finding firewood, and she ends up spending the whole day like curled up on the ground crying. And Zoya says, "Took your time, didn't you?" when she gets back. And she said, "Did we have to freeze while you two frolicked in the woods?" And Alina says, "Turned out I needed a good cry." And Zoya says, "Next time invite me. I could use one too." And it kind of sounds funny, but also it's really sad. They have a time around the circle. They reminisce about all the people that they knew who died, and they all talk about how basically crotchety Bagra was. And David says that she hated him, only taught him once with the rest of the fabricators his age, and then she refused to ever meet with him again. He says he has no idea why she hated him, but Alina knows. She knows that David must have reminded her of Morozova because he's a genius, but he's always lost in his work. But Alina knows that it's not the same because he'd been there for Genya when she needed him. And so they camp out for the night. They go somewhere else to I don't know how to say it. They decide to split up into 2 groups where Mal, Zoya, Harsha, and Tolia would travel with Alina into the Sikarzoi so that they could find the Firebird, and then everyone else would go to one of the settlements in the southeast edge of the valley. And so Alina and company go to find the Firebird. They travel for days and days. And then at some point, Alina kind of just goes on a walk and accidentally finds a Firebird. She like is falling into a cliff basically, and Mal comes, saves her. And through that process, they have a realization that Mal is the 3rd amplifier. Which, okay, I kind of get why people didn't like that, but I feel like it kind of makes sense in the story. I think when I first read that, I was like, what? And then this time I was still kind of like, what? But it kind of makes sense. It explains why they were initially drawn together. It gives them a good story, really, of growing up together, the Sun Summoner and this 3rd amplifier. And it makes Alina go through the story Bagra told her again, and she realizes that maybe the daughter did survive, but what Morozova had to do to save her was use Merzost and use the process that he was going to use on the Firebird to make the 3rd amplifier, and he had to use that process on his daughter because that was the only way to bring someone back to life like that. So he basically installed the powers of the 3rd amplifier into her. And that's kind of why Mal is so good at tracking, because he, like, once again, the small science, all things are one basically, and so he is especially connected to everything. That's why he can track things so well. Obviously this realization hurts Alina because to get the amplifier's abilities, you have to kill the thing, and she obviously doesn't want to kill Mal. Mal is ready to die, which is, once again, why do people hate Mal so much? He's literally ready to lay down his life for the love of his life and to save his country. I don't understand why everyone hates him so much. Probably if he could have just killed himself, he would have, to give Alina the third amplifier, but because Alina needs to do it, he can't do that. Like, why do people hate him so much? I don't get it. It did kind of feel like a waste of time that they spent like 50 pages looking, or half of the last book, most of this book, that thinking about the Firebird, looking for the Firebird, when it did not matter. It didn't matter at all. We didn't need it. And also, I guess the I am become a blade, the famous line, did have foreshadowing. They mention it in here because he's literally a weapon to be used now, or he always was, but now he knows he is. But, you know, for all intents and purposes, Mal takes it pretty well. He's like just starting to kind of enjoy life more. He's like looking at the sun again, like enjoying sunshine and things, because he thinks, he knows, like, this is probably my last chance to do that, so I'm going to enjoy it now. So I feel like he took it as well as he can. So once again, I'm asking, why do people hate Mal so much? I don't get it. And they have a cute little moment, which is depressing also, because Alina is obviously upset. She says, don't tell me all this is happening for a reason, or that it's going to be okay. Don't tell me you're ready to die. And he says, it's not going to be okay. None of this is happening for a reason. And saints help me, Alina. I want to live forever. And they kiss. They have a really cute, nice moment. Like, he wants to live forever, but he knows he can't. So I don't know. I feel like it works. They both would die for each other. What's wrong? And they go back to the people who they sent to those settlements. They get news from Tamar that the Darkling attacked Westravka, and he also attacked Karamzin, which is where Alina and Mal grew up, and also where they had sent all of the students from the Grisha school and their teachers. And Alina ends up going to the Darkling through their mind thing, and he shows her that he killed Bakken and the 3 other Grisha instructors, and also Anakuya, who was her like kind of nanny thing. And he remarks that she was, I think, the closest thing you had to a mother. So she was basically that. Obviously, this is devastating. And the Darkling proclaims that he's going to go into the fold again, and he demands that Alina meet him there and like turn herself in. And he's going to bring all the Grisha children as hostages to make sure that Alina will surrender, or else he's going to extend the fold into Westravka and also have the kids be subjected to being eaten by the Volcrum. And so Mal, once again, is like, you have to kill me, and Alina's like, I cannot bear to do that. Is that why people hate him? Because Alina likes him so much? Like, I don't know. And then David and Genya had an idea where basically they could ambush the Darkling in the fold, because Alina, when they were on the flying hot air balloon thingy, was able to like mask the ship and basically make it invisible by bending the light around it. So their idea is for Alina to do that around all the soldiers so that they can attack the Darkling without being seen. And then they would be able to save all the children and then hopefully kill the Darkling. So they make plans for that. They do that. There's a nice scene with Tolia where he says, I know you don't believe as Tamar and I do, but no matter how this ends, I'm glad our faith brought us to you, because they are like true believers. They believe in this religion. They believe that Alina is a saint. I also appreciate that about this story, about this book, how it deals with like living saints. I just think it's a very interesting aspect to have a religion where you're not God, because saints aren't gods, but your deities, I guess, are alive, were once alive, are human basically, but not human because they're saints, if that makes sense. None of this is making sense, but I just enjoy that aspect of how religion is incorporated into the story. They had also sent a message to the Apparat right before they were attacked by the Darkling to ask for soldiers, and the Apparat basically ignored them, and the letter was infiltrated by people who were loyal to Alina, and so 12 people showed up because they were the only ones who had knowledge, and the Apparat is like, oh, we'll just pray for the fold to be closed, and he ignored Alina's request. He just wants to be on the winning side. He doesn't care about what side it is. So they end up with not as much help as they hoped for. And also, right before this, Nikolai shows up again, and Alina is not sure if he recognizes her, so she holds out the ring, the Lansov emerald ring that he had given her before, and he walks up to her, and another aspect of comedic relief, and he picks it up and puts it on her finger, and he asks Alina, basically he like mimes Alina using her light on his chest, but it doesn't work. And then Alina hugs him, like the darkness inside of him kind of takes over, and he almost starts to attack Alina, but then he kind of comes back to his senses a little bit and realizes what he's doing, and then like flies away and leaves, and it's so sad. It's so sad. Right before they go to ambush the Darkling, Alina and Mal have a lovely scene where they talk about what they would want for their wedding, and it's really cute, really great. I enjoyed that. Next day, they go to ambush the Darkling, they start the fight. They don't see any of the Grisha children, but Alina thinks they must be below the deck. And then Nikolai shows up and fights on their side somehow. One of the Nichivoya takes hold of Tamar, but then Nikolai grabs that Nichivoya and throws it, kills it. And he starts fighting the Nichivoya, and Alina says, I could almost imagine his laugh. Well, if I'm going to be a monster, I might as well be king of the monster. And Alina finds out that the students aren't actually there. It was just a threat the Darkling did because he wanted Alina to think that he had them so she would show up. But he left them. He says, did you really believe I would endanger Grisha children when we've lost so many? And then she kind of falls off of the skiff because she got shot in the arm, so she can't use the cut. And then she throws herself over the side of the railing. Mal kind of shows up and he has a knife and he tells Alina to kill him, to sacrifice him so that he can be the third amplifier. And he says, save them, Alina. Don't let me live knowing I might have stopped this. And she stabs him. And it's really sad, but it wasn't that sad for me because I know he comes back. Sorry, I already read this, but it was sad. And then she doesn't get any power. She's very shocked. I did forget about that. I forgot what happened with the third amplifier. Her power is gone after she does that. And then Tolia and Tamar see her and they race towards her and she's like, save him. So they start doing basically CPR, the Grisha version of CPR, and they realize that all of the Oprichniki are able to use the light. They all become sun summoners. And Alina realizes that Morozova was not trying to make a single powerful person. He was trying to make himself feel less alone with the amplifiers. So the three amplifiers together created thousands of new summoners. And the Darkling is very upset because he had also been trying to use the Firebird. He'd been trying to make Alina super powerful so that he could be less alone, but he did not realize that. And then her collar and the fetter had fallen away. They broke, and the Darkling says, you were meant to be like me. You're nothing now. And he dropped his hands, and Alina saw the realization strike him. He was truly alone and always would be. And then Alina stabs him through the heart, but agrees not to let him die alone and calls him by his true name, Alexander, which he let die a long time ago. Which maybe, I guess, is why people are like, oh my god, they would have been such a good couple, kind of. But I never saw, obviously there was no real friendship because they were enemies. Like, I never saw any kind of romantic sense. This is Alina doing a good deed for someone that she did have a connection to, but it didn't feel like a romantic connection. It just felt like just a strong connection. I don't know how to explain that, but it did not feel romantic at all to me ever. So I don't understand that. Like, she's just a nice person. That's how Alina is shown to be throughout the series. And this is someone who is powerful, who she understands was doing the wrong things for a good purpose. And she understands his reasoning, even if his actions were horrible and wrong and not the way to go about it. So I don't see that. So the Darkling dies, hurrah, and Mal breathes again. Alina makes everyone lie and say that she died. She says that this was my sacrifice, this was my martyrdom. Tell everyone I died. Because she no longer has her powers anyway, and she never wanted this life. So we get a little bit of like political things. Nikolai ends up turning back, but he still has the darkness, the dark feeling within himself. And he's still a little bit like, Alina, are you sure? Now I understand you, I guess, or you understand me because you have also felt the Darkling inside you. And hi, hello. My camera battery had the audacity to die. So it shouldn't look that much different. It's only been a couple of hours, but I had to charge my camera. So the angle changed, etc. That's why. What I was saying, for all intents and purposes, her and Mal are dead. They take on new names that we don't get to know. There's like the last epilogue at the end where Alina and Mal start their own kind of orphanage in Karamzin, I think, where they grew up. So they start their own little orphanage. They hire teachers and things, and they kind of seem like an not odd pairing, but like odd people, because like the teachers don't understand their ways about them, and nobody knows where they come from because, you know, they've given themselves new lives and stuff. But it's noted that like Nikolai and Genya and David and Zoya like come visit sometimes, and it's nice. And we still get to see the sadness that they've experienced, that they feel because they've experienced war. They sacrificed a lot of things. They saw a lot of people die. And that's the end of the book. And I feel like it's such a good ending to the series. Like I said before, I just really enjoyed this book. I felt like it ended really well. I felt like it dealt with all the things it was dealing with well. I think the reason last time I didn't enjoy it quite as much is because I wanted Mal to die. I didn't want Mal to die. I never hated Mal, not like everyone else. I still don't know why everyone felt like that, but I just don't love it when authors, you know, kill characters and bring them back. That's one of my least favorite things. But now, having like sat with it and everything, I think I just enjoyed it more. I can kind of understand where Leigh Bardugo was coming from, because she did want to like give them a happy ending. So I can kind of see it. I don't want Mal to die because I dislike him. I just think if you're making a decision where you lead your characters to believe that characters are going to die, and Mal did die. I think Alina had like a theory or something. Basically, the Merzost that Murazova used to revive his daughter was like stolen life. So that is what was killed when Alina killed him, and so his real life is what brought him back, which is why he can't track anymore and everything, because the Merzost is gone. So I still kind of stand by that. I think Mal should have died, but I still think I'm gonna give it 5 stars because I really did enjoy it. I love Nikolai so much. I love all of the characters. I really enjoyed seeing them. I'm still not a huge like Mal and Alina fan because I just don't ship characters that way generally, and they were fine. I thought the way their romance was written was fine. I thought it was enjoyable. If you really like romance, I don't see why you would have an issue with it. They both clearly love each other. There are some like miscommunication issues, I guess, throughout the book, but it's all like still with love. It's so of like fantasy romance and stuff, I enjoy this one probably on the higher end than some others that I've read. You'll see whenever I do the Six of Crows vlog, there is a romance in there that I really do like and really do ship. But just, I don't know, this one doesn't hit me that way, but I don't think there's anything wrong with their romance. Once again, I, for real, don't understand the hate for Mal. I read this whole book like looking for it, and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't, like, he's fine. Like, I don't know. He loves Alina. What do people not like that he loves Alina? I don't get it. I guess I could have looked up other people's opinions, but it's fine. If you have an opinion and you disagree, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know about anything you have felt about this series throughout. I know this video is very, very long, so thank you so much for watching it. Like I said, will have the Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom vlog coming soon-ish. It's coming. And I will also have a King of Scars vlog. In the comments down below, leave me a bone emoji. I think there's like the crossbones or like the skull and crossbones. I don't know. There's a picture right next to me. But yeah, so for Shadow and Bone trilogy, leave me a bone emoji in the comments down below. Again, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye. One last thing. The other thing with the Darkling, I still don't get it. I think I explained that well enough. Like, I just don't see any romantic element going on in their relationship. Like, in the first book, fine when they kiss, but as soon as Alina realizes that he's really awful and is a betrayer, I feel like any kind of romantic feeling she has for him goes away. Like, any pull she has for him isn't real romance. Like, I don't see how people so vehemently ship Alina and the Darkling. Like, I just do not see it. So there's that.